Good morning from the campus of the United States Sports Academy. This is Sports Talk, a weekly broadcast from the campus of the United States Sports Academy in Daphne, Alabama, where we have a panel discuss relevant and current issues in sport. I'm Dr. Arthur Ogden, and I serve as moderator. And today's panel is Dr. Steve Butler to the far left, Dr. Fred Cromartie to the far right, and in the middle is Dr. Tim Foley. He's Dean of Student Services. And since this is the beginning of the year for us, our first broadcast this year, and over the past 3 months, we've all been preoccupied with the college football playoff and then the inaugural football playoff championship game being played Monday night between Ohio State and one of the Pac-12 teams. We realized that this is really, really worth talking about. So we're going to have kind of like a free-for-all discussion and just reflect on the first college football playoff season. Dr. Butler, why don't you go first?
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt from a financial perspective and a popularity perspective, it was a huge success. The numbers, you saw the numbers there in front of you, that TV viewership. I believe it was the championship game was the highest rated cable program of all time, and the semifinals were number 2 and 3. So from that perspective, it was obviously a success. I think the most important thing, though, is that we had a true champion who earned it on the field, and Brad Edwards, who was always the guy who told you who was going to be in the BCS game. It's very clear from all the numbers, and he ran the data, that the championship game under the old system would have been Florida State and Alabama.
Right.
And those two teams both lost in the semifinals. So the fact that Ohio State and Oregon earned the right to play in the championship game on the field, rather than going through a bunch of computers and a popular vote from the coaches, I think was a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, that moved all the numbers, and it went over quite well. Dr. Cromartie, your observations?
Well, I reiterate what Dr. Butler said. I think it was a smashing success in that. But the one thing that we do have to take into account from viewership in that is a little bit unique from the past. This is the very first time that we've ever had the game offered on cable television like that. So the fact of the matter is, once you look at it a little bit further, some of the information out there is saying that subscribership went up for a lot of people that did not have cable television and that wanted to see the game in that. So that was one of the driving forces too behind it. They did exactly what it was that they were supposed to do. They provided all of the hype, which was fantastic. And it lived up to everything that they hyped the game up to be. But one of the other unique features that we have to pay attention to also is that all of the ESPN stations, they were dealing with the game in a number of different fashions. One of the channels had a panel of coaches that were talking about it. Another one of them had it where they were breaking down each and all the plays and everything. They even advertised it in Spanish. So, I mean, ESPN and ABC, Disney, their parent network and business operation, really, really put on their thinking caps and had it all laid out and ironed out. And it worked out fabulous. Now, let's take a step back and say, would the demographic and the viewership might have been different had it been Ohio State and TCU?
Well, that's conjecture we'll never know, because both TCU comes from a small market, unless you include them in the Dallas-Fort Worth. Columbus, Ohio is a small market, and Bump Stump, Oregon, wherever that is, they may have Seattle. That's still a small market, and so I think your point is well taken. Before we jump onto that, though, Dr. Foley, what are your observations? You're from out there in the Pacific Northwest.
I would just like to see an expansion. FCS even expanded to 24 teams, where the top 8 seeds got a bye. But I think the biggest controversy was that Ohio State was put into the top 4. and what TCU was knocked out.
Right.
So if there's any way to add 8 or even maybe 16 teams, I'd like to
Yeah,
see that
I
happen.
think that that's a good point, and it's been discussed quite a bit. But in Monday night's game, Ohio State obliterated Oregon 42-20 in the championship game.
With 4 turnovers.
We have with
With
4
4
turnovers. That tells us something about the selection. And if any, when you reflect on it, if any team did not belong in there, from my perspective, it was Florida State. And I've had this discussion before. Oh, but Florida State was undefeated. There is something that our viewers out there and this panel knows. Has to be a paradigm shift in the way we approach this. We cannot approach it with the same mentality as the old poll system. The old poll system robbed Auburn of its 2004 opportunity when it was undefeated. The old poll system works under one premise. If you start the season at number 1 and don't lose any games, you stay at number 1. If you start at number 10 and don't lose any, you stay at number 10. And this mythology, which does not include taking a close look at all the metrics, believes that if you're undefeated, somehow or other you are gifted. The point is, at any one of those games that was close for Florida State, or if that official that robbed Notre Dame of the game down in Tallahassee, if Florida State had lost any single game, they would have completely dropped out of even the top 10. And that's just the fact of the matter.
But you had
But
your
there's an
paradigm
old,
shift.
but there is, no, the mentality still is, and you saw it when who was the guy that's on ESPN, who's the Ohio State
Joey Galloway.
Joey Galloway said, how can somebody go from being number 3 to number 6? That's the old poll mentality. And yes, it was a new day and a new kind of cauldron and a new kind of mix, and there could be some validity to it, but the committee was just experimenting. So I would suggest that as we go into the next season, we take a look at it some more. I think we ought to expand it to 18.
Well, see,
If
I would,
you have
I would argue that if one of the 4 teams that made it should not have been there, it would have been Alabama. Because I thought the SEC West was highly overrated all season, and I think that was proven out in the bowl games. And I would ask the question, who did Alabama beat this year that was any good? And I think the answer is nobody. But that being said, the fact that we actually got to see, you didn't think Florida State should be in.
No.
I didn't think Alabama should be in. They would have been in under the old system.
Can I ask you a question?
Here's the one thing that's consistent with the old mentality of the 2. And I agree with you that we have to take a look at that, and you've got to get people away from it. But coaches still agree with the way that it laid out.
Well,
So,
they believe me, having worked with plenty of them, they're not particularly gifted nor objective. I think that the committee did as good a job as they possibly could. What we have now, sport analytics, we have these new statistics we can look at, which we never looked at before.
My question is, let me ask, if you have 24 teams that can compete for a national championship, is there any of this discussion at the end of the
yes,
season?
there's still going to be discussion because the 2015 is always going to be the one to say, why wasn't it?
So the bubble teams with the,
You see it play out every year in and year out with the NCAA basketball tournament. All the time. There's always 1 or 2 teams that say, why not us?
First of all, we can't make that comparison. 24 teams is ludicrous.
like the FCS, okay?
Yeah, but the FCS does 3 things. Number 1, they play a shorter season. They don't have a 12-game regular season. Okay, they have some automatic qualifiers. Okay, and then they have a strictly NCAA coaches poll, and that's how they go by it. Okay, so I believe, and in order to maintain the integrity and the money that Division I FBS football is bringing into all the athletic departments, in addition to the money it's bringing in to ESPN and ABC and so for CBS, I believe we should go to an 8-game. Now, there have been arguments against, well, gee, the season's too long. Come on, how many games do they play in baseball? They play 164 games. They have a fall schedule and a spring schedule. They talk about, oh, well, they missed classes. Wait a minute. Basketball starts in October, stretches all the way over halfway through into the spring term.
And takes road trips
It
in the
takes
middle of the
road-
week during
exactly.
school. Yeah.
And I noticed I had to deal with this, and you dealt with it too when you were at Auburn. I was assistant AD for student services, and I had to deal with all of these, and I had to send two tutors along with the teams. So if they want to do this, which I believe they should, I think that they need to do three things. Number one, reduce the regular season schedule. Forget this 12-game schedule, and they did that before they had anything other than the BCS. Cut it back to 11, maybe cut it back to 10.
10.
Guarantee at least 2 open dates during the season to help these guys because they're bigger, faster, stronger. It prevents really, really serious injuries. And the third thing is, I don't know if the audience is aware of this, but the NCAA, you hear about, oh, we're going to sign 25, we're going to sign 25. Well, that's fine. You can sign 25 each year. But the maximum number any FBS school can have in football on scholarship is 85. What happens to the other 15? Is it natural attrition or what? My suggestion, my recommendation would be forget that other 15. If you have 25 per year over a 4-year period, that's 100. Leave it at 100 scholarships. So if you shorten the season, you have breaks in there for the team to have an opportunity to heal. And if you have more players to protect those and help the health of them, then let's go ahead and have an 8-game play. Because an 8-team playoff, if you make it all the way through, is only 3 extra games. So if you're playing a regular season schedule of 11 games, 3 is still 14 games.
And they played 15 this year,
Yeah.
the last 2 teams.
I know. And the thing of it is they have a long season. Very few of them have breaks in between. But
And losing the 2 games would actually, in a strange kind of way, affect the FCS
Yeah,
schools more
it would.
because they wouldn't get those big paydays.
Right.
Like, my alma mater, Florida Atlantic University, their first 2 games this year were Nebraska and Alabama. And we got our butts kicked both games, but we got very nice additions to the athletic.
Well, that's
budget.
one of the arguments.
Covers the injury cost.
That's one of the arguments that's transpiring right now too, is they want to be able to eliminate those kinds of games. They're trying to say now, if you're going to do that, they understand that these other schools are trying to make some money off the program, but if you're going to do that, 1 game. They want to try to reduce it as much as they possibly can. But all this that we're talking about will only come to fruition if the players that really have a decision in this, the presidents of colleges and universities, come together and say, look, yes, we do need to reform how it is that we are running football right now and be serious about it. Right now, the lure of money, that pot of gold is too
Right.
great.
And it clouds their
It's even
judgment. And really, when you start thinking
33
about,
million people.
when you start thinking about, do they really, really have the athlete's interest at heart? When they're not enforcing the 20-hour practice week, do they really have it when, you have to fight tooth and nail so that parents who live in trailers or live in parked cars somewhere can get a break to go watch their sons play in these games? And they're making, and the guy who's the head of the NCAA, what's his name?
Mark Emmert.
Mark Emmert is making $1.6 million a year. And these kids are out there. He wouldn't have $1.6 million a year if these kids weren't out there busting their guts. I think that there should be a stipend given to them. I think it needs to be regulated in a certain fashion. But all this money that, Nick Saban's making, what, $8 and $9 million? They just signed the coaches are making millions and millions. What do the athletes get? The athletes get on probation when they take too much spaghetti at the all-you-can-eat buffet. Isn't that what happened to Oklahoma last year?
Yeah,
Where was it?
Jim Harbaugh just signed for $5 million a year.
Yeah.
He's won exactly 0 college games in the last 4 years since he left Stanford. I think one of the things too that we need to.
But he's been coaching in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's true. But one of the things, but he's never won anything. One of the things that I think ESPN really was fortunate this year. If you say what you want about Oregon and Ohio State being small markets, they hit the jackpot when it comes to the 4 teams that made it to the Final Four.
Oh yeah, because of the brands,
Right, and
not because of the markets. Think about the 4 markets they come from: Tallahassee, Tuscaloosa, Columbus, Ohio, and Eugene, Oregon.
But it's
They're
different.
terribly small market.
It's
Of course,
different in college.
there are really no big time football programs, with the exception of Rutgers, in a large market.
At USC.
Well, USC.
But you know, I think to put it in perspective, when you're talking about college football, it's totally different. And I think the best way I heard that summed up at one point was that when it comes to college football, Atlanta is a suburb of Athens.
Yeah. And Georgia Tech is right there
Yeah.
too, so that's it. Well, another point I think that we need to make is that people keep comparing what's going on in collegiate football with what they do with the pros. And this morning on Mike and Mike, I heard Greenberg spouting off something about, well, we shouldn't expand it to 8 because we have lesser teams. And he was trying to make the illogical comparison between the Carolina Panthers, who were what, 9-8, 8-1 or something like that. They made it into the playoffs. And he said, and that number 8 team, wait a minute, that number 8 team was Michigan State. And Michigan State put it on Baylor in the bowl game. So that doesn't hold. And I think that if we had those top 8 teams in an 8-team venue playoff this year, it would have been really, really quite good and very interesting. I think a good argument made about what you're saying about Alabama. I think that some of the Alabama hype got them up there and got them into it. And there were a lot of other deserving teams.
Oh, it had nothing
But
to
I
do
think
with Coach
that
Saban.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I think TCU, I don't think Baylor belonged in there, but I do think Michigan State and TCU belonged in there. And you know, if that guy hadn't robbed Notre Dame in Tallahassee, Notre Dame would have been in there, because Notre Dame went downhill after that. But you know, there's the scenario. And it looks like we are
Out of time.
out of time again. Thank you once again for Dr. Cromartie, Dr. Butler, Dr. Foley, and myself, Dr. Ogden. Thank you so much for joining us, and please keep the suggestions coming in. And for those of you who are not aware of it, the United States Sports Academy has its annual Game of the Year, and that will be released very soon. The press release is going to be coming out today. And so check it out and check our website, usssa.edu. And please send your suggestions of what you might like for us to discuss in the 2015 season to sportstalk@usssa.edu. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day in sport.